Hello and welcome to Cafe DC. I'm Faiz Rahman. Our guest today is a very busy Washingtonian, director of DC office of Muslim Public Affairs Council, commonly known as AMPAC. It's an activist and it's an advocacy organization here in DC and across the country. And they do a lot of good work for the American Muslim community and also for the mainstream American society. Haris Tareen, thank you very much for being here finally. I know you're very busy and we try to get you, on so many other occasions, but because of your scheduling conflicts, we couldn't. Finally, you're here. So what just happened was this summit at the White House, counter-terrorism summit. Lots of people from around the world came. Muslims from America also had a very good representation. What do you think about that summit?
Well, first of all, thank you for having me, Faiz. It's
Absolutely.
a pleasure to be on, my honor to be on. I think the Countering Violent Extremism Summit at the White House was designed to bring together everyone who has been working on the issue of violent extremism for some time. It was initially designed to be a domestic-focused summit, making sure that there are programs around the country where there's very important outreach efforts and engagement between law enforcement and Muslim communities, government officials and Muslim communities, because in the past we've seen some instances of people going to places like Somalia or going to Syria and Iraq, and the idea is to ensure that the American Muslim community is resilient, that there are areas of conflict around the world, but that the American Muslim community addresses those conflicts through civic and political engagement and not through any negative means of going over and joining the conflict there. So the idea then, after the Paris attacks, it became more of an international summit.
So the White House kind of expanded the scope.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And so the gathering was essentially experts, community leaders, religious leaders, political leaders coming together and saying, how can we address this issue? How do we look at the issue of violent extremism in a way that makes sense, that does not blame one community? And I think for us that was important as AMPAC. We did not want the American Muslim community stigmatized and blamed. American Muslim community is a very strong, integrated community in the United States who are contributing in every aspect of life. We didn't want the American Muslim community to be singled out and seen as a suspect community.
Actually, that's I was coming to that point also. Despite deemed as being successful, I'm talking about the summit, there was a lot of criticism from two very unlikely groups who seemed to be actually, they had different points to criticize the summit, but the Muslim organizations, they also criticized it, and I think AMPAC was one of them, and basically saying that just what you just said, that there was so much focus on this Muslim extremism and Muslim community. On the other hand, the other conservative and other organizations in this country, they criticized the summit for not being forthright about Islamic issues and issues facing the Muslim world and the Muslim community, and quote unquote basically they wanted President to be more vocal about the Islamist extremism and terrorism, quote unquote. So please tell us about more. Why do you think it wasn't a good idea for the Muslim American community and some of the Muslim American organizations that criticized this summit?
Well, I think there's a few issues that worried American Muslims, that worried us. Number one was the singling out of American Muslims. Right now, there's a very difficult environment in the U.S., especially after the Chapel Hill shootings. There's a lot of fear in the Muslim community, thinking that their neighbors think they're suspects, that their neighbors are impacted by the media image of Islam and Muslims and are looking at them in a suspicious manner. So American Muslim groups, we thought that the summit, if it focused primarily on so-called Muslim extremism, would exacerbate that, make that even worse. And so that was one specific. The second thing was violent extremism comes in all shapes and sizes and forms. The last few attacks in this country have not been by Muslim violent extremists, they've been by right-wing violent extremists. The attack on the Sikh Gurdwara in Oak Creek was done by a right-wing extremist. The attack on the Jewish Community Center in this country was done by a right-wing extremist. Even the FBI itself says that one of their biggest worries is right-wing militia extremists. Now, so when we look at this, we say that is also a threat to our country. We need to look at the issue of violent extremism broadly, from a more comprehensive manner, and not just focus only on one community.
But Haris, to be fair with the president, don't you think he did his best to dissociate Islam from, the terrorism that you talk about?
Nor should we grant these terrorists the religious legitimacy that they seek. They are not religious leaders, they're terrorists. And we are not at war with Islam. We are at war with people who have perverted Islam.
He said it so, loudly, right there in front of the whole world, that terrorists are terrorists.
Right.
And to associate them with any religious ideology is basically to serve their purpose. So, I mean, did he, even though the summit was criticized before it happened, do you think after seeing the proceedings and after listening to the speeches at the summit, did it allay some of your concerns that you pointed out in your press releases and your statements?
I think the president's speech was a very positive step. It was a step in the right direction. The president did a few things that we were all concerned about. The first thing he did was he said forcefully to the American people that Islam is not the problem. The problem is terrorism.
And all of us have a responsibility to refute the notion that groups like ISIL somehow represent Islam, because that is a falsehood that embraces the terrorist narrative.
And he again reiterated the remarks that he made at the National Prayer Breakfast when he said that all religions that have one point or another gone through this issue, because violence and terrorism is a human problem, not a religious problem. And I think that was important for the American people to hear again. Number two, the president talked about violent extremism having multiple root causes. It's not just a religious problem. A lot of time religion is used as an excuse, but he talked about the social problems, the political problems, the economic problems that drive people to join these groups, the vacuum in power and the vacuum in authority. These are important points that the president brought up. And the last thing that the president did was he said very forcefully, when he gave the example of the 11-year-old girl who's a Muslim American, he said that Muslims belong to America.
I'm thinking of a little girl named Sabrina who last month sent me a Valentine's Day card. She's a young Muslim American. And she said in her Valentine, I enjoy being an American. And when she grows up, she wants to be an engineer or a basketball player, which are good choices. But she wrote, I am worried about people hating Muslims. If some Muslims do bad things, that doesn't mean all of them do. And she asked, please tell everyone that we are good people and we're just like everyone else. And everybody needs to remember that during the course of this debate, as we move forward with these challenges.
And that was an extremely important point to make to the American people, because the president is not only speaking to Muslim groups. I mean, we have our concern, but the president is speaking to the public. And that's why, as you said, there was some pushback from the right saying, why aren't you calling this Islamic? And there was a protester right outside the White House saying, it's Islam, stupid. It's a sign that said, it's Islam, trying to blame Islam. But I think the president is doing the right thing in saying, no, it's not. It's a perverted ideology. It's terrorism. And don't blame Islam, because like you said, it gives ISIS, it gives Al-Qaeda, it gives all these groups the legitimacy that they don't really deserve.
Let's talk about your work, Haris. Your family comes from Afghanistan, and actually knowing your background, I know you're like more like an international family. Your wife is a Saudi American, mom, dad, different backgrounds, and you lived in Pakistan, and you come from Southern California. So, mashallah, very rich background, and we appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Tell us about your organization, the Muslim Public Affairs Council. When it was founded, what does it do, and what are your challenges as a young Muslim activist in this country?
So the Muslim Public Affairs Council was founded in the late 80s, early 90s in Los Angeles, California, where you're from, as you said. And the idea was really the visionaries who established, Dr. Maher Hathout and Salam al-Mariyari, the visionaries who established the organizations wanted an institution that looked towards engaging the broader society. At that time, American Muslims really were focused on themselves. They were focused on building mosques, building schools, building places to preserve their identity. And MPAC, the idea with MPAC was we need to go beyond that. And we saw the importance of that, especially after 9/11, when people didn't know who we were as a community. So the idea of MPAC was to engage what we called the opinion shapers and policymakers, people who create the opinion and public conversation about issues like Islam, like Muslims. So it was to engage government, the policy shapers here in Washington. It was to engage the media. They're the ones who have an impact on how the perceptions about Muslims are made. And it was to engage Hollywood as well. Because as you know from this last movie, American Sniper, the way film and Hollywood portrays Muslims has a big impact on how people react to Muslims and to their neighbors. And so the idea of MPAC was that let's engage the broader society, let's engage Hollywood, let's engage media, let's engage government, and let's give them the reality of who American Muslims are. Islam has been part of America since its founding. Since day one, there are Muslims who were buried in all the national cemeteries. Muslims died in the civil war in this country. Muslims were a good 25 to 30% of the slaves who came to this country were Muslim. So the idea was, how do we take the idea of Islam from being something foreign and making it something that's American, and also highlighting the experiences of people like the African American community. The African American Muslim community has been an integral part of America since its founding.
Haris, we'll just take a short break here, and when we come back, I would like to know a little bit more about the challenges that you face, especially in the current environment and the atmosphere that's been out there. Please stay with us. We'll be right back.
And so we can't expect to have a place in society, to have our rights, unless we organize and we demand that from our government and we demand that from the public.
Welcome back. I'm Faz Rahman and you're watching Cafe DC. Our guest today is Haris Tareen, the DC Director of MPAC, the Muslim Public Affairs Council. Haris, okay, so we were talking about MPAC's work, within the framework of American Muslim community and the scope that you very well defined. Let's talk about the challenges right now. It has made your job more difficult lately, or you think you have done enough that now you seem a little bit more comfortable in dealing with these, Okay, your smile and a little laughter says it all, so please go ahead.
So the American Muslim community over the past decade and more has really made a lot of stride in establishing organizations and really trying to engage the broader society. But I think we function in a very difficult environment right now. Not just a US environment. I think the lives of American Muslims in general are very good. People live very constructive and positive lives, and they're contributing and they're benefiting from society.
That's a very good point.
Yes.
That's a very good point. I mean, when we focus, of course, on this negative stuff, Chapel Hill, and some other incidents here and there. But if you look at the entirety of the community and overall the society as America. I think you just made a very good and important statement.
That's right, and actually the research shows that, you know, there's a recent poll that was done by Pew and Gallup, and what it showed was that Muslims were the most positive about America's future. So the American Muslim community in general is doing quite well economically and socially. But then there's the broader challenges. The broader challenges is that we live in a very difficult international environment. And what happens in the Middle East, in South Asia, in North Africa, impact how we as American Muslims are seen as well. And so I think the media has a big role here, is that when a group like ISIS or Al-Qaeda or one of these groups commits a heinous act, the media portrays that as being somehow part of the broader Muslim community. And I think, you know, when those conversations are had, it impacts the perception of Americans. And Americans who get their news from, you know, TV, from the radio, and don't have a personal relationship with Muslims. I think this is key. All the polls, including Washington Post, suggest that if an American who has a relationship with a fellow Muslim American, they're more likely to have a positive perspective and understanding of Islam. If they don't have a personal relationship, they're more likely to have
media and all this.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think so I think that one of the biggest challenges is perception. How do we as American Muslims change the perception of our fellow citizens about us? How do we make Islam something that is a positive, constructive part of society?
And I'm sure you know it's easier said than done, because the community itself is not just, you know, the community here.
No.
You're talking about so many, as you just mentioned, that it's, you know, everything, whatever happens in North Africa, very distant. I mean, in Nigeria, for example, it affects, you know, the community here. So that's
and the fact that the other challenge is that the American Muslim community itself is a very diverse community. According to Pew, American Muslims are the most diverse religious group in America. So there's no one American Muslim community. It's communities. We have Pakistani Americans, we have Egyptian Americans, Syrian Americans, Somali Americans. We have people from all different backgrounds, and with different
people from Indonesia. They're like, you know, they have totally different take on so many things.
That's right. They have different perspectives, different focus. So, but what brings us together is our Muslimness and our Americanness, and that's what we have to focus on. That's what. And the third challenge is really trying to ensure that we organize civically and politically, because the one thing about America is that unless communities organize and try to not only demand but engage and make sure that their rights and their place in society is given, no one hands it to you. You know, America is known to be a place where you have to work for your rights. You have to work to be part of the country. I mean, the African American experience, the Jewish American experience, the Japanese American, Latinos, everyone will tell you that you have to work hard to find your place in society. And so we can't expect to have a place in society, to have our rights, unless we organize and we demand that from our government and we demand that from the public. And I think that's the other challenge, is how do we organize and build institutions and invest money into those organizations and individuals to help secure our rights and our place in society?
I mean, on the one hand, on the one hand you have issues, overseas issues that affect the community, okay? That affect your work, make your work a little bit more challenging. But when you come back to your own community, as you rightly said, it's a very diverse community. At the same time, there are very diverse challenges, bickering, infighting, and, you know, organizations which fight with each other. But largely, I have seen at least the national organizations, they have carved out their own niche and their roles, and they stick to their roles. For example, MPAC, and then you have CARE.
Right.
So they have two different roles and they pursue their goals. What do you think about the community's own understanding of itself as being an American and its own Americanness before anything else? Do you think this is something that we as American Muslims and American Muslim organizations need to address that?
I do so. I think the idea of the American Muslim identity is important. You know, if you ask if you go to Pakistan, the streets of Karachi or Islamabad, and you ask someone, you know, is there a problem? Is there a contradiction between being Pakistani and Muslim?
No.
They'll never say there's a contradiction. No, I'm proud Pakistani and proud Muslim. You go to the streets of Cairo in Egypt, they'll tell you the same thing. You go to the streets of Kuala Lumpur, the same thing. You go to the streets of Algiers, same thing. But when it comes to being an American, there's somehow this notion that I either have to be an American or be a Muslim in some people's minds. And I think that will slowly change as generations who live in this country, second, third, fourth generations. But that we have to make a deliberate effort to show that being an American does not contradict being a Muslim. I can be a proud American and be a proud Muslim. I may not agree with my government's policy on something that is foreign policy or even domestic policy, but I was still a citizen. I am an American. I accept my rights and my responsibilities as an American, and I'll work to change that. And I think that's what is powerful about being a Muslim, is that you're given the tools to accept the realities, but also to work towards changing things in a positive manner, and being an American as well. So I think that is something that we have to focus on quite a bit, because these groups like ISIS and some of these extremist groups, they prey on that identity problem.
I mean, see what I fail to understand. I mean, when you believe that your religion is a universal religion,
right,
then how come you have East, West, North, South, when, you know, an American Muslim is as good a Muslim, I mean, whether it's a Caucasian, black, white, you know, or brown. I mean, a Muslim is a Muslim because it's a universal religion. So you can't just you can't confine yourself to just one territory. Like if you're a Pakistani, just you're a good Muslim. But if you're a born American Muslim, you're not a good Muslim. Or somehow there's this inherent conflict. How come believing in your religion as a universal religion, you can also believe that there's some kind of an inherent conflict between East and West and Islam and the West? That, you know.
Well, I don't think it's religious. I think it's political. I think these groups, what they do is they prey on young people who have some identity crisis. You know, growing up, even myself, growing up, as I was growing up, my parents, we were immigrants to this country. We were trying to find our place. Am I American? Am I Afghani? Who am I? You know, what's the right balance? Until I was able to understand that there's no problem with being an Afghan American or American Afghan. You know, I can be proud of where I came from, but my home is here. This is my home. This is my country. This is where I will raise my children. And this is where I will serve my religion and my country. And I think that is something that we have to focus on. I think a lot of times people who may not agree with a government policy will confuse that with accepting America as a whole. And we need to tell people that I may not agree with a government policy of, you know, if I'm a Pakistani, I may not agree with a government policy, but I still, you know, love my country, I serve my country and its people. And I think that is a distinction that we need to focus on making, which I think will help with the identity problem of a lot of young people.
Exactly. Haris, before we end this program, I would like to talk about you, Haris, right? As in your role as director of MPAC's DC's office, you interact with a lot of people in this town. You've been to the White House quite a few times. You met the president and lots of, you know, important officials in the other branches of the government. What do you think? How they receive you as a Muslim American activist? What's your take when you met the president in person? Let's talk about that a little bit.
You know, I think there's a lot of hunger for engagement with American Muslims. You know, as I would have never imagined as a young refugee kid coming from Kabul, going to Islamabad and then coming to America, that I would have the opportunity to sit down with the President of the United States, or with, you know, the Speaker of the House, or with so many leaders. But what I realized was that, you know, if you engage and you have a mission and you have your principles and you have your goals, the door's open for you. And you have institutions like MPAC that allow you to engage and to actually have access. It's pretty easy. And what we do is we bring a lot of young people at Impact to Washington every year. And then at the end of the program, they say, wow, it's so easy to engage our government officials. And people are looking for partners and people to engage with, especially Muslims in government. And I think for us as a community, what we have to do is we have to be confident about who we are. I think a lot of times people are not confident. When you have that confidence and you're comfortable with who you are, you can engage the President of the United States, you can engage political officials, media officials, and we'll have a conversation, and they're willing to have a conversation. And so I think what I've learned from the experience of coming from the streets of Kabul to the streets of Washington is that really anything is possible if you're confident in yourself and your background and are willing to engage and work hard. And I think that's the story of America. Really, that is the story of America. With all the challenges that we have in America, and we have a lot of challenges, the story of America is still that you can, if you work hard enough, if you really put the effort in, you can do something and make an impact. And I think that's the story that we need to keep telling, and that's the change that we need to work towards.
Very good. Haris, great having you here on this program, a wonderful discussion. And I hope you become more effective in your work and solve some of the issues facing the community and also the larger American society. So Haris, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Great discussion. And thank you very much for watching Cafe DC. I'm Faiz Rahman in Washington, DC, saying goodbye for this week.